From a desolate orphan, he forged an empire.
Picture this, an orphan kid from the middle of nowhere in Mongolia who had absolutely nothing. Living in dirt-poor conditions, abandoned by his family, even kicked out of his own tribe. But in less than 50 years, this nobody built the largest empire in human history. Bigger than the Roman Empire, bigger than the British Empire, hell, bigger than both of them combined. His name, Temujin, who later became known as Genghis Khan, and today, we're gonna break down the 9 secret strategies that made him virtually unstoppable. Strategies so cunning, so ruthless, yet so damn effective that they changed the face of the world forever. Fair warning, some of these strategies might blow your mind and shake everything you thought you knew about war and power. 1. Psychological warfare, terror as a weapon. Let's kick things off with the most terrifying strategy ever used in the history of warfare. Genghis Khan understood one fundamental truth: winning without fighting is the ultimate victory. But how the hell do you pull that off? He weaponized terror like nobody's business. When Mongol armies approached a city, they didn't just charge in guns blazing. They'd send messengers with a message so simple it was chilling. Surrender your city, or you're all gonna die. Sounds like an empty threat, right? But here's what made this strategy absolutely devastating. Genghis Khan always kept his word. When a city refused to surrender, he'd unleash total annihilation. Nobody survived: men, women, children, even the damn pets. Not because he was some sadistic psycho, but because he knew that one massacred city would make 10 others surrender without a fight. This was a long-term investment in terror. 2. Military strategy, lightning-fast death. Now let's talk about the military aspect that made Mongol armies absolutely terrifying: speed. While European armies crawled at 10 to 15 kilometers per day, Mongol forces could cover 100 kilometers in a single day. How in the world was that possible? Every Mongol warrior had at least 3 to 4 horses. When one horse got tired, they'd hop onto another without missing a beat. They slept on horseback, ate on horseback, hell, they even took a dump on horseback. This wasn't just about physical speed. This was about speed of information and decision-making. While enemies were still planning strategies to defend against an attack from the north, Mongol armies had already appeared from the south. While enemies were waiting for reinforcements, their cities were already surrounded from every direction. Genghis Khan understood that in war, timing is everything, and he was always one step, even 10 steps ahead of his enemies. 3. Adaptation strategy, learning from enemies. This is what set Genghis Khan apart from every other conqueror in history. The guy wasn't arrogant. Every time he defeated an enemy, he didn't just take their treasure and territory. He absorbed their knowledge, technology, and strategies. When he crushed the Jin dynasty, he adopted Chinese siege technology. When he steamrolled the Khwarezmid Empire, he studied Persian administrative systems. When facing European heavy cavalry, he developed specific tactics to counter them. Mongol armies were like massive sponges, soaking up everything good from every civilization they conquered. This made them stronger after every single battle. Imagine facing an enemy that never made the same mistake twice. An enemy that learned from every fight and became more perfect each time. That was the Mongol army under Genghis Khan's leadership. 4. Organizational strategy, revolutionary decimal system. Now we're diving into the aspect that rarely gets talked about but was absolutely crucial: Genghis Khan's military organization. He created what's called the decimal system. 10 soldiers led by one commander. 100 soldiers led by a higher commander. 1,000 soldiers led by an even higher commander. And so on up to 10,000 soldiers, called a tumen. Sounds simple, but this was revolutionary for its time. This system allowed incredibly efficient communication. Orders could flow from Genghis Khan to 100,000 soldiers in a matter of minutes. No red tape bullshit, no complicated hierarchy nonsense. Everything was based on merit, not bloodline or social status. A shepherd could become a two-man commander if he proved himself on the battlefield. 5. Intelligence strategy spies everywhere. Let's dive into the most hidden aspect of Mongol power. Their spy network. Genghis Khan understood that information is power. Long before his armies reached any territory, his spies were already there. They disguised themselves as merchants, travelers, even priests. They studied the terrain, enemy military strength, political situations, and even palace gossip. When Genghis Khan attacked, he already knew exactly who would betray the local ruler. He knew the perfect timing to strike. He knew the weak spots of every fortress. This wasn't blind warfare anymore. This was mathematically calculated warfare. Imagine playing chess, but you can see all your opponent's cards. That was the advantage Genghis Khan had in every single battle. 6. Tolerance strategy, strength, and diversity. Now we're gonna discuss the most surprising strategy of all, tolerance. Yeah, you heard that right. The conqueror known as the most brutal in history was actually incredibly tolerant. Genghis Khan didn't force conquered territories to change their religion. He didn't force them to abandon their culture. Instead, he protected all religions and cultures. Why? Because he understood that diversity is strength. A Chinese engineer works better when he's not forced to abandon his faith. An Arab merchant stays more loyal when his culture is respected. This strategy created genuine loyalty, not just fear-based compliance. And genuine loyalty is way stronger and longer lasting. This made the Mongol Empire not just massive, but stable. Chapter 7. Economic Strategy. The Secure Silk Road. Let's talk about the economic aspect that often gets overlooked. Genghis Khan wasn't just a conqueror, he was a brilliant economist. He understood that war requires massive funding. And the best way to finance war is by developing the economy. He made the Silk Road the safest trade route in the world. Merchants traveling through Mongol territory got full protection. Anyone who robbed a merchant got the death penalty. This created an incredible economic boom. Trade taxes poured into Mongol coffers like crazy. With overflowing treasuries, Genghis Khan could finance larger and more advanced armies. He created the perfect cycle. Safe trade generates money, money finances armies, strong armies protect trade. 8. Communication strategy, revolutionary postal system. Now we're getting into communication technology. Managing a continent-sized empire requires incredible communication systems. Genghis Khan created a postal system called the Yam. Every 30 kilometers, there was a station with fresh horses and standby personnel. Messages could be sent from Mongolia to Persia in a week. For 13th century standards, this was internet speed. This system allowed Genghis Khan to control his empire incredibly effectively. He could know what was happening at the western edge of his empire within days. He could send orders and reinforcements quickly. Rebellions could be crushed before they became serious threats. The Yam system was later used by Marco Polo and became the inspiration for modern postal systems. 9. Legacy strategy, building for the future. The final strategy is the most genius of all. Genghis Khan didn't just think about the present, but the future. He knew he wouldn't live forever, so he built systems that could function without him. He created written laws called the Yasa. These laws governed every aspect of life in the Mongol Empire, from warfare tactics to economic management. He also trained his successors systematically. Every one of his sons had to prove their leadership ability on the battlefield. They didn't automatically become rulers just because of bloodline. They had to show they were worthy, but hold up. There's one massive secret we haven't discussed yet. All this time, we've been thinking that Genghis Khan was incredibly cruel and brutal. But did you know he was actually one of the most progressive leaders in history? Under his leadership, Mongol women had rights almost equal to men. They could own property, get divorced, even lead armies. This didn't exist in any civilization in the 13th century. Genghis Khan also banned torture and created a relatively fair legal system for his time. He even granted complete religious freedom throughout his empire. Cities that surrendered without resistance weren't just spared, they actually thrived. Samarkand, Bukhara, Baghdad, these cities reached their golden age under Mongol rule. What made Genghis Khan look brutal was propaganda from his enemies, especially from European and Arab historians who lost to him. They wrote history to justify their defeats. How could we possibly lose to uncivilized barbarians? So they portrayed Mongols as monsters without civilization. But the reality was, Genghis Khan was a strategic genius who built the most tolerant and advanced empire for his time. He used his brutal reputation as a psychological weapon. When enemies were already scared shitless before fighting, the battle was half won. The biggest irony is that the conqueror considered the most brutal in history actually saved more lives than he took. Because his terror strategy was so effective, most cities surrendered without resistance. This avoided bloodshed that would have been far more massive if every city had to be taken by force. And that's Genghis Khan's greatest secret. He wasn't a monster. He was a genius who understood that sometimes looking scary is the best way to be kind.